What Light Lens Lab actually has created here is a combination of two of the most infamous Leica lenses of all time. Welcome back. Prior to the late 60s, Leica's fastest lens was the 1.4 Summilux. However, in 1966, they released the 50mm f1.2 Noctilux. At that time, it was the first lens ever to provide a high contrast image at the wide open aperture of 1.2. There were, of course, other manufacturers providing faster lenses at the time, but they all suffered from a low contrast rendering. Leica's 1966 Noctilux was hailed as the world's first ever truly useful f1.2 lens. The trick was 6 elements, with 2 of those elements having aspherical surfaces, with 1 in the front, 1 in the back. The downside was that due to a lack of proper machinery at the time, the grinding and polishing of those aspherical surfaces had to be done manually. Now you combine that with the unpopular opinion that once the lens is stopped down to 1.4, it's pretty much on par with the Summilux. And some would even say that the Summilux had the advantage because it did not suffer from the aberrations of the Noctilux. Ultimately, the 1.2 Noctilux was not quite the commercial success that Leica had hoped for. However, the lens still went on to be revered for its unique characteristics, and the legend has lived on for the past 58 years. It's still known today as the most famous of all high-speed lenses. Cut to 1976. 10 years later, Leica released a new version of the Noctilux, now with an all-new, refreshed Canadian design, coming in at a half a stop faster with a maximum aperture of f1, adding 1 more glass element to the optical lens design, and an all-new patented Leitz glass formula known as 900-403. The 1976 f1 Noctilux was once again hailed as the world's first ever truly useful lens when ripped wide open at an f1. However, users of the lens called it impressionistic rather than scientific, doting that it was truly for the connoisseur types. Cut to 2024. So here we are, half a century later, and these lenses are still not very attainable for the majority. Just check out the latest eBay prices on the original 66 Noctilux, and they're not even in the greatest of condition. However, for a somewhat more reasonable price, there is a new offering from this weird little company called Light Lens Lab. Now, I will admit, in the past, not too long ago, literally just this past summer, I threw some pretty heavy shade at this Light Lens Lab. Like Light Lens Lab, that literally builds their entire company off of ripping off old lens designs. Because back then I was very eager to lump them in with all of the other cheap generic lens manufacturers that are out there. I did not get this lens for free. We'll talk about that in a minute. However, with some of the more recent cinematography projects that I've been working on, I was desiring a faster lens because I was limited by all of my lenses being a T2. So naturally I wanted to add a more super speed lens to my kit. And I just wasn't interested in something modern like the Sony G Master 50mm f1.2, plus that lens breathes heavier than Shrek walking up a mountain.
Look at me, I'm a big fat slob! I've got bigger titties than you do!
And because I am also a Leica M rangefinder photographer, I thought, hey, why not choose something that I can use for both video and stills? Enter the 50mm f1.2 Noctilucent from Light Lens Lab. Now, despite the fact that I'm a lowly YouTuber with only 38.2 thousand subscribers, thank you for subbing, by the way. As I said earlier, did not get this lens for free. No. In fact, I traded 2 lenses for this 1 lens. Crazy, I know, but hear me out on this. They're not selling these lenses for very cheap, and I'm gonna explain to you why in a minute, why I believe they're not as cheap as all the others. First of all, this one here is a silver chrome, as you can see, but it is all brass, and it costs $2,400 US. Now I know, if you're feeling how I used to feel, you're sitting there going, no way would I ever spend that much bread on some cheap Chinese knockoff lens. But once I got this lens and started using it, and I started using it immediately, the guy that I traded it from, he actually met me on set. We were guerrilla indie filmmaking style, and he waited for me to get done on a current setup, and I put it to work immediately. And I wasn't totally impressed right away seeing it on the Sony FX6, but I kept using it. The next day, I threw it on my Leica M, took some portraits up here on this rooftop in downtown Los Angeles, and it was slowly growing on me. And then by the third day of using it, I really, truly started to understand it. I became rather a fan of it, and then dove into all the research that I shared at the top of this video. Now, let me explain to you my non-affiliate opinion of why I think this company, Light Lens Lab, is different from all those other generic brands, and why I feel this thing costs what it costs. Because this is almost an exact replica to the original Leica 1966 Noctilux. Almost, it's very close. Now, I do emphasize almost because obviously you can never be a Leica lens if you're not a Leica lens, but also this thing actually has a few key elements that the original 66 Noctilux could not achieve. Again, it is lacking some pretty important things as well, but let's start with the good. First off, this Noctilucent does have the same double Gauss optical lens design as the original 66 Noctilux, as well as incorporating those two aspherical elements, one in the front and one in the back. And here's the crazy part. Light Lens Lab went through the pains of recreating the manual polishing and grinding of those aspherical elements, spending over 72 hours on each lens element, manually polishing and grinding to try to match the original 66 Noctilux characteristics. I mean, come on, that's pretty damn impressive. But what I found even more interesting is that they use lanthanide-infused glass, which is actually very similar to the original Leitz glass formula known as 900-403. Now, if you recall from the opening monologue, Leica didn't start using that new glass formula until the second version of the F1 1976 Noctilux. So what Light Lens Lab actually has created here is a combination of two of the most infamous Leica lenses of all time. By using the hand-polished aspherical elements and the double Gauss design of the original 66 Noctilux, plus the same glass type of the 1976 version. And when we compare the MTF charts, they are very, very close to one another. At the same optimum aperture of 5.6, they're a damn near identical performance. This is the A4 Gentry e-bike from AIPAS. It's powered by a Samsung 48-volt 11 amp hour battery. This is what I've been using to go a lot further when doing street photography in the suburbs. This e-bike has a range of up to 62 miles on a single charge. And the battery can quickly detach for more convenient charging and is even IP65 waterproof. The A4 Gentry has a 1,000-watt rear-wheel drive brushless motor featuring a 5-level pedal assist, reaching speeds of up to 28 miles per hour. Its lightweight aluminum alloy frame and foldable design make it suitable for travel. And it comes stocked with all the features to make you feel safe and comfortable out on the road. The A4 Gentry from AIPAS. Take your street photography even further with AIPAS e-bikes. Link down below, and be sure to use the code JustinPhillip at checkout. So now let's compare the Light Lens Lab at 1.2 versus the original 66 Noctilux at 1.2. You'll notice that the Light Lens Lab is not dipping quite as low as the Leica. So what this technically means is that the Light Lens Lab is actually retaining more sharpness and higher contrast when the lens is ripped wide open, which is a feat that Leica themselves could not achieve 58 years ago. So now if we compare the distortion charts, once again, it does appear that there is a very, very slight improvement to the Light Lens Lab. So according to these charts, it could be said that Light Lens Lab did make some minor technical improvements to the original 66 Noctilux. But that's just charts, right? And since I could not find anyone renting this crazy old lens in the LA area, and I certainly don't have 30 grand lying around, I did, however, find these awesome side-by-side sample images from Reddit user Scav at My Legs. Kudos for the name. We'll circle back around to these. As awesome as this lens is, it really is a testament to the overall efforts of the company Light Lens Lab. With that being said, I am a tad disappointed in this lens because it still doesn't have the same amount of aperture blades. So the original 66 Noctilux had 16 blades, whereas the Light Lens Lab only has 15 blades. Now I know that's only one blade less, but I say the more the merrier. So let's just compare these side-by-side shots from Reddit. And in my opinion, the bokeh of the Leica does have the advantage. It's a tad more swirly, it's a little bit more softer in my opinion, and that's simply because it has that one extra iris blade. Now, another glaring downside, in my opinion, the Light Lens Lab just does not have the same beautiful warm colors and natural skin tones that the Leica does. If you ask me, you can see it clear as day in these awesome sample shots from Scav at My Legs on Reddit. The skin tones look way more pleasing on the Leica. Now, with the images that I took with this lens on my M10, mine are warmer than what they show from this Reddit user, but that's because I'm obviously adding warmth in Lightroom in the color grade. When we were shooting these golden hour shots ripped wide open on the overpass there, granted, this was a very gnarly situation. I'm pulling my own focus. I'm ripped wide open at 1.2. It's golden hour. We're chasing the sun. I'm shooting directly into the sun. My subject is backlit. Not only is he insanely backlit, he also has dark skin tones. So, I was setting myself up against all odds. And still, I think it was an interesting choice for me to do. It definitely gave us something a little more artsy that I was desiring for this specific project. But sometimes the colors are just a little too nuts. It's just a little too wild. And in the color grade, that does add a little bit more time in your editing process. So I guess the tilde there is that only a Leica lens has Leica colors. You're not gonna get it anywhere else. It can never be imitated. However, since they went through the pains of completely copying the lens down to those hand-polished aspherical surfaces, they got the same old school double Gauss optical design, which by the way, a lot of lens historians such as Leica guru Erwin Putz, rest in peace, he was always complaining about the downfalls of that old double Gauss lens design. So it's not technically a perfect lens design, but that might be what adds to the weird, quirky characteristics that a lot of us are after. Either way, Light Lens Lab copied it to a T, even down to copying the old Leitz glass formula. So because of that, you do kind of still get a little bit of that Leica glow when you are ripped wide open at f1.2. And I gotta admit, other than that one missing iris blade, I am still pretty impressed with the lens. I'll tell you when it happened for me. It was the second day shooting the portraits. The images that I was getting out of the M10 were really, really nice. I liked those a lot better than what I was capturing on video with the Sony FX6 the day prior. And then on day 3, I was doing these interview setups, and I chose to use the Noctilucent. And I didn't rip it wide open though. I went with an f2. So I stopped it down a little bit and it cleaned up so fast, so quick. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, this is good, right? And that's funny because that is also reminiscent or similar to the original 66 Noctilux. That's something that Erwin Putz wrote about in his literature on researching all of the Leica lenses. He said that as soon as you stop that original Noctilux down to a 1.4, it matches the Summilux. It is nice to think that you have this kind of superior lens at 1.4, but you still have the option to rip it open a half a stop faster and get something a little more unique. Or even if you're shooting in a super low light situation, or if you just have a setup where the background is not that interesting and you just want it to fall away a little bit easier, just rip it wide open. So here's an example of where I had the subject in front of this very small American flag. And the American flag is just set up with 2 C-stands directly behind him. We're shooting this outside, so I'm at the mercy of the sun. I had no crew on this. I'm all by myself for this particular setup, shooting with the FX6. And I had to stack him so close to the American flag that I thought, well, I'm just gonna rip this lens open a little bit. I don't think I was ripped wide open, but I did go 1.4. And it felt kind of nice. I mean, that flag kind of falls away almost instantly, and it kind of created kind of a nice little vignette. This lens does have a very heavy vignette. Here you can see a really artsy example. Now this one I did rip wide open at f1.2. I kind of like how crazy it gets behind her with the fence and the weird shrubbery and stuff. It almost is a little bit reminiscent of the really cool Petzval lenses from Lomography. It's not that cool, of course, you know, not that much swirl, but if you wanted something a little bit more contained, then you have that option in this. And again, the fact that it cleans up as soon as you start stopping down, that for me was the winner right there. Now, because I traded lenses for this one, you know, I don't care if you buy it or not, right? I have no affiliation with the company. However, if you do want to check this out, I have left some links down below. I will tell you that you get a couple things when you buy this lens. Not only do you get the pouch, right? They have really nice leather pouches. We've all heard people talk about those. But something else that is cool is they give you an ND filter. So this is kind of nice, right? The weird thing is that it's only an ND factor 4, which means it's only a 2-stop ND. It's a nice thought, but really only 2 stops with a 1.2 lens. So when I was taking these portraits on the roof, I used one of my Nisi variable NDs. And because I could put it at 4 stops for these portraits and still rip it wide open in the hot noonday sun while standing on a roof in downtown LA, right? So you might need to get a little bit stronger of an ND that they included with it, but I guess it is a nice gesture that they do include that. And you can easily throw on any filter because it has a fairly common filter size of 49 millimeters, as well as if you are daring enough like I am to shoot directly into the sun, they also give you this crazy large obnoxious lens hood. This is actually pretty close to the original Noctilux design as well. Now the weird thing is there is a UV filter built into this. I guess that's cool. I think it would be even cooler if there was a way to pop it out and, you know, screw it directly onto the lens, but there doesn't really seem to be a way to do that. My only downside with this lens hood it spins 360 degrees. It's kind of annoying and really weird that it does that. I don't know if the clip on mine is broken or what. I mean, I did trade this from a guy, so maybe there is something wrong with the hood. I don't know. Maybe they just come like that too. I don't know. Maybe if more people know, they can let us know in the comments. You will want to use this though. I did use it for any backlit situation because, you know, try to avoid some of the crazy washed out colors and weirdness that happens in the backlight. It does help, but you can tell it can still get pretty gnarly depending on what you're shooting into. I really love the build quality. However, I will say that if you can, try to get your hands on the black aluminum version, or even better yet, the titanium version. It will be the lightest because this all brass one is just way too cumbersome. In fact, it weighs 75 more grams than the original 66 Noctilux, okay? And that's just too much, especially when I throw it on the already beefy M10. Now this camera is not so much fun, right? This isn't exactly a compact rangefinder setup. But again, I don't think this is a walking around lens, right? To me, this is a specialty lens. So I wanted to add this because this is a really weird thing. I don't know if it's this copy. The #1 complaint about these Light Lens Lab lenses that you will find all over Reddit and all over the internet is that their quality control doesn't seem to be quite that good. So obviously, again, that is something you pay for with Leica, right? But let me show you how it gets caught up on my M10 every time I mount it. So here we go. Let me try to get this in the... You see that? It's not smooth at all. So I don't know if it's just the way this was machined at the factory or what, but it doesn't mount as smooth as all of my other M-mount lenses. It goes in fine, but when you want to get it out of here, it kind of gets snagged up. It feels like these are just a tad off in size, but it really did seem to be, for me, the best option for, you know, for photos and video to have that super, super fast lens. So I am kind of glad I took a chance on it. I don't regret trading 2 lenses for it. They were 2 lenses that I have not used in over a year. So it was a win-win for me because I used this lens the same day the guy dropped it off to me. I know there are some cheaper offerings from Voltlander, right? But the problem with Voltlander lenses for video is that they just breathe way too much. They are really heavy breathers. This thing, it wasn't that bad. I didn't notice a huge difference in the focus breathing on this versus other Leica M lenses when I've used them for video. And if you're thinking like, wow, who uses Leica M lenses for video? Guys, a lot of people do. They used Leica M lenses on these other movies here that I can't remember right now, but I'll put them on the screen. It's so popular that what Leica did, they rehoused all of their really fast M mount lenses for cinema use of the Leitz line. That's the M.08. That's what those are. They're literally just rehoused photo lenses. So there is one big negative of this lens, specifically for video, is the minimum focus distance is only 3.4 feet, which is over a meter. That's pretty horrible. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but in practicality, it is. So that is something to keep in mind. To Light Lens Labs' credit, the original 66 Noctilux also had a 1 meter close focusing distance, so I guess it just would have been too costly to improve that part of the lens. I just thought that it would be nice to give my opinion on it because I do have such, an unbiased review kind of style. That's one of the reasons why you don't see companies sending me stuff all the time. I don't really favor the companies when I review anything, whether I get it from them or not, right? I try to keep it real with all of you, as well as with myself, right? And not every company wants to do that, right? Some companies really want to control the narrative. All right, we're gonna wrap it up there. Light Lens Lab, if you're watching, hey man, I apologize for throwing you guys under the bus. I did give you a chance, but now I'm completely sold. Congratulations. I can't wait to see what comes out of the lab next. I would love to check out that Cook Speed Pancro remake. P.O. box in the description. Anyways, thank you all for watching. You're the real ones as well. Be sure to share this video around. Hit the subscribe button if you are brand new here. And yeah, that's gonna do it. That's a wrap. Let's see how much it falls forward. Look at that. Oh my gosh, it's so heavy. Yeah, but it is beautiful for portraits.
Thank you. Thank you.
Doesn't matter who we are. What matters is our plan. No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
I am cinema.